The words cut deeper than any silence ever had. At her own daughter's wedding, June Ortega sat frozen as Marin raised her glass and said with a smile, "My mother couldn't help financially, but at least she cheered me on." The room chuckled politely. Her new in-laws smirked, and June felt herself shrink into a shadow. What no one knew, not even her daughter, was that June owned part of the very resort they were sitting in. She had chosen silence, but in that instant, her silence became its own kind of betrayal. June Ortega was 66 years old the day her daughter's words carved through her like glass. The late afternoon sun burned across Sedona's red cliffs, and the glow of it poured over the wedding resort, where crystal chandeliers swayed above silk-covered tables. Everything shimmered with wealth and prestige. The Fairbanks family name stamped on every detail. This was their stage, their empire, and June felt the weight of it pressing her further into the background. Marin, radiant in lace and satin, raised her glass. Her voice trembled at first, sweet and careful, before steadying with the confidence of someone who knew she had married into power. "My mother couldn't help financially," she said brightly, "but at least she always cheered me on." The air collapsed into silence, followed by a ripple of awkward chuckles. Veronica Fairbanks, the new mother-in-law, tilted her chin and smiled with satisfaction. The hierarchy had been spoken aloud. The divide between families now felt permanent, etched into the night like a vow of its own. June sat still, every muscle in her body tight. The humiliation stung not because of money, she had chosen silence about that, but because her daughter had made her sacrifices sound small, as though love and years of quiet giving meant less than a checkbook, a lifetime of restraint, of hiding her means so Marin could grow independent, was reduced to a polite laugh from strangers. Her chest ached as she rose from her chair, slipping out into the stone terrace where the desert wind carried a cooler breath. She longed for space away from the glances, from the pity dressed as amusement. The ache inside her was not new, but this time it felt sharper, harder to bury. Then a quiet voice pulled her back. The resort manager approached, nodding with respect. "Ms. Ortega," he asked gently, "would you like to continue keeping your shareholder meetings off the public schedule, as you requested?" June froze. The sting of her daughter's dismissal had barely faded. Yet here was the truth only she carried. She was not the broke widow the room believed her to be. She was a silent owner of the very resort where Marin had just belittled her. Power she had chosen to keep hidden was suddenly hovering in the open air, and for the first time that evening, June wondered how long her silence could last. 2 years before the wedding, Tucson held a quieter version of June's life. After her husband died, she kept the little house immaculate, the old wooden bookcase dusted, the bills stacked on a tray, a narrow desk pushed to the window where sun spilled over a ribbon of gold desert. Grief did not make a mess of her. It made her deliberate. After the funeral, she sold the family parcel out by the scrub and mesquite to a solar project. The check could have remade everything, but June refused the kind of change that shouts. She formed a charity fund, then placed the remainder into discreet, long-term investments. She told no one, not even Marin. She had watched friends lose their homes to children who treated inheritance like a prize. She wanted her daughter to stand on her own legs, to choose work and love without the drag of easy money, or the rot it can invite. At night, when the house exhaled and the cooling desert clicked in the vents, June read. She pulled public filings and news briefs on Veronica Fairbanks's assisted living chain. The language chilled her. Seminars pitched as peace of mind. Consultations that funneled elders towards signing over assets in exchange for safety. It wasn't illegal to sell reassurance, but it was a short walk to coercion. If her wealth became visible, she knew exactly how care could morph into custody. The gray-painted safe in her bedroom closet held more than ledgers. Beside the charity documents and investment summaries lay a photocopy of a complaint from another state. A former family alleging deceptive tactics inside the Fairbanks network, attached to a record of a past inquiry. It wasn't a weapon so much as a shield, a reminder that systems wear polite faces while they size you for the harness. That was the bargain June made with herself. Keep the finances quiet, keep the future hers. Let Marin think independence is natural, not staged. If anyone ever tried to shepherd her toward the pen with gentle hands and urgent voices, she would open the safe, and the papers no one saw would finally have their say. Morning spilled bright and golden through the towering glass windows of Veronica Fairbanks's Scottsdale estate. The long dining table gleamed under a white linen cloth, roses arranged precisely down its center, flutes of champagne catching the light. It looked, at first glance, like a celebratory brunch for family after the wedding. June had come because Marin and Tyler said they wanted to talk things over. But the centerpiece was not flowers or food. It was a thick leather-bound folder, set squarely in front of her, heavier than anything else in the room. Veronica's smile was polished, her voice smooth as silk. Just a few papers, all for your protection, of course. She flipped the pages with the confidence of a woman who had closed deals her whole life. Power of attorney, advance healthcare directive, a deed transfer cloaked in the soothing phrase, for your safety. At her side sat a so-called elder care advisor, neatly dressed, nodding at every sentence. His role less consultant than accomplice. Marin leaned in, her hands trembling around her glass. Mom, this way I can have peace of mind. Her tone was urgent, wrapped in worry but echoing someone else's script. Across the table, Tyler tapped his spoon against his glass, eyes down, complicit in silence. June studied the folder before lifting her gaze. Her voice, calm but edged with steel, broke the practiced rhythm. I understand your fears, but I will have my attorney review these. No one signs their freedom away over breakfast. The air thickened instantly. Veronica's smile cracked, and in its place came the sharp gleam of control. She leaned forward, her words now stripped of pleasantries. If you refuse, you don't just endanger yourself. You drag Marin into crisis. Whatever assets you may have, they'll become a burden. The statement landed like a blade, slicing through the pretense of care. There was no longer talk of protection, only a demand for submission. June met Veronica's stare and felt the line harden beneath her feet. The brunch had ended, and the battle had begun. Late afternoon in Tucson painted June Ortega's small house in amber light. The desert wind rattled through the cactus outside as she dusted her bookshelf, savoring a rare, quiet moment. Then came the knock, firm, official. At the door stood a representative from Adult Protective Services, arms full of thick files, voice flat and procedural. We received an anonymous report suggesting you're no longer capable of caring for yourself, that you might be vulnerable to exploitation. June stepped aside, calm despite the sudden chill in her chest. The inspection began immediately. The agent opened her refrigerator, rows of fresh produce, neatly stored. He checked her pill organizer, every dose divided by date and time. His gaze shifted to the calendar tacked on the wall, doctor appointments clearly written in black ink. Nothing hinted at neglect. June added to the evidence with quiet precision, producing medical records and a financial plan from her gray safe. Each document cataloged, each signature in place. The man hesitated, caught between protocol and what lay before him. Then the neighbor appeared at the gate, phone raised. On his screen, the footage from June's doorbell camera flickered into view. A Fairbanks assistant, slipping a glossy nursing home brochure into her mailbox like a thief. The atmosphere shifted. This was no accident, no random concern, it was a trap. The agent's face tightened as he logged the evidence. June said nothing, her hands steady at her sides. But inside she felt the weight of what was unfolding. This was only the opening move. What had started as a daughter's careless words at a wedding was now a calculated assault on her independence. The battle had moved beyond family walls into institutions and files, threatening her dignity in the eyes of strangers. Yet the smear carried its own clue. Someone's scheme was beginning to unravel, and the truth was pushing its way into the open. The lamp on June Ortega's desk burned low, casting a yellow pool over the gray safe she had kept since her husband's death. It was well past midnight in Tucson, the desert air still and dry, when she drew out the folders she had collected. Contracts, filings, financial statements, all of them pointed to the same truth. Veronica Fairbanks was gambling everything on a massive loan, to expand her assisted living empire. Every brick of that expansion rested on the approval of a handful of creditors. Outwardly, June remained the picture of a vulnerable widow, quiet, aging, weighed down by whispered doubts about her independence. But inside, she had been preparing. The following morning she dressed with intention, slipping into a plain gray suit. At the bank in downtown Tucson, she was invisible in the lobby's bustle, just another older woman waiting at the counter. Yet when she signed the documents, her pen barely trembling, the ground shifted. Through a company she had formed, Desert Bloom LLC, June acquired a portion of the debt Veronica needed. It was a small stake, but it carried the power to demand revisions, to halt reckless terms. As she set down the pen, her breath eased. She was no longer the target of someone else's control. She was a voice at the very table Veronica thought she owned. At the same time, she had quietly authorized her charity fund to launch a program supporting home caregivers in Pima County. It was not public yet, but the paperwork was sealed, the funds in place. Where Veronica wielded pressure and contracts, June prepared to counter with care and legitimacy. The desert outside her window held its silence, but within that silence, June discovered her strength. What others mistook for weakness had allowed her to move unseen. Now, the woman dismissed as a burden had become one of Veronica's creditors. The shift was invisible to the world, but June knew the power balance had begun to turn. Scottsdale shimmered like a jewel that evening. The city's most luxurious hotel blazed with chandeliers, the marble foyer crowded with dignitaries, business leaders, and reporters. Every flashbulb seemed aimed at Veronica Fairbanks, who glided across the stage in a gown of midnight blue, the picture of power. Tonight was her triumph, a gala honoring her for dedication to elder care. Applause thundered as she accepted the glass trophy, her smile broad, rehearsed, perfect. But triumph can sour in a heartbeat. When the bank's representative took the microphone, his voice carried with the authority of final judgment. Effective immediately, the expansion loan for the Fairbanks senior living chain is suspended pending a full review. Several creditors have requested new conditions before releasing additional funds. The applause fractured into whispers. Veronica froze, her hand tightening around the trophy. The cameras still clicked, but her smile faltered, her eyes narrowing in confusion. She had not anticipated resistance, much less from a silent creditor whose name she had overlooked. Hidden in the list of lenders was June Ortega, the woman she had mocked, cornered, and dismissed as powerless. And then came another blow. The massive screens flickered to a new announcement. A foundation, choosing to remain anonymous, had launched scholarships for frontline caregivers. The crowd turned as names scrolled across the display. One name stood out, catching Tyler's breath. The nurse who had cared for his father in his final days. Marin's heart jolted. She recognized the threads now, the quiet withdrawals her mother made, the secrecy, the calm defiance. The anonymous foundation wasn't some faceless donor. It was June. Her mother, the woman she had belittled in front of everyone, had been building strength in silence all along. The ballroom seemed to tilt. Veronica stood rigid, humiliated under the very lights that had crowned her a champion. Around her, polite applause shifted from celebration to speculation. But for June, standing quietly among the crowd, the moment wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the dignity she had been denied. The truth had stepped into the open, and it had arrived under the blinding brilliance of a chandelier. The night after the gala, Veronica's home was stripped of glamour. The living room, cavernous and cold, glowed under a muted lamp. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass, Camelback Mountain loomed in pale moonlight, silent and solemn. 4 figures sat opposite one another. No audience, no cameras, only truth waiting to be spoken. June reached into her bag and placed the same leather-bound folder on the coffee table. The papers that had once threatened her autonomy now looked harmless, almost pathetic. She didn't hesitate. With a sharp, deliberate motion, she tore them in half. The sound of ripping paper cracked through the silence, leaving the shreds scattered like fallen leaves. Her eyes locked onto Marin's. "You may be afraid," June said, voice steady and sure, "but you will never have the right to take away my freedom, just to ease your own anxiety." The words broke something in Marin. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her voice trembling as she confessed how fear had guided her choices, how she had clung to control rather than trust. "I thought I was protecting you, Mom," she whispered. "But I was really protecting myself." Tyler lowered his head, guilt shadowing his face. "I stood by and let it happen," he admitted. "I was weak when I should have defended you. I failed you as a son-in-law." Across from them, Veronica sat motionless. The iron pride in her posture had cracked, replaced by a brittle stillness. She had fought to impose her will, but tonight she was stripped of leverage. The law, the money, the family she sought to command, all had slipped from her control. Retreat was her only option, and even that carried the taste of defeat. The legal documents, once a weapon, now lay destroyed. What remained was an agreement, fragile but undeniable. From this night forward, June's life would belong to her alone. Decisions about her future would not be signed away at brunch tables or dictated by someone else's fear. The mountain stood immovable outside, watching as the room shifted from confrontation to a tentative kind of peace. It was not forgiveness yet, but it was the start of respect. And in that heavy quiet, June finally exhaled. Her victory wasn't loud or theatrical, it was simple, steady, and absolute. The desert highway stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the silence of New Mexico's open land. A silver airstream gleamed against the fading light, its polished sides catching the last warmth of the sun. Inside, the hum of the road was steady, almost meditative, as the trailer rolled toward Ghost Ranch, a place long tied to art, solitude, and the freedom to create life on one's own terms. From the rearview mirror, a dream catcher swayed gently, its feathers brushing the glass with every turn. It was a simple charm, but it carried the weight of a promise that even in an unpredictable world, one could choose what to hold on to and what to let slip away. On the small table behind the driver's seat lay a handwritten card, words penned in careful strokes. "I respect every path you choose." It was a reminder that journeys are not only physical, but also emotional. That respect can grow even out of broken soil. With one hand on the wheel, June spoke into her phone, her tone warm and assured. She agreed to serve as a volunteer advisor for an elder rights organization, her voice carrying the strength of someone who had walked the path of doubt, control, and silence, and emerged unshaken. Her commitment was not born of obligation, but of conviction. No one should be diminished simply for growing older. Outside, the horizon blazed violet and gold. The desert, often thought barren, revealed its own kind of abundance. Rocks glowed like embers, the air shimmered with heat, and the sky itself stretched wide enough to cradle every possibility. Watching it unfold, June smiled. The road behind her had been scarred with humiliation and betrayal, but the road ahead was clear, and it was hers. What had once felt like defeat had turned into strength, not through confrontation alone, but through patience, dignity, and the quiet confidence to act when the time was right. The airstream pressed forward, a vessel of independence, its steady motion proof that freedom does not belong only to the young. It belongs to anyone brave enough to claim it. Life, in the end, is measured less by the battles we fight than by the choices we protect. Dignity is not something granted by others. It is something lived, fiercely and quietly, in every decision to keep one's voice intact. Even the harshest desert can bloom when met with resilience. And even in the final chapters of a life, the journey can open onto vast new horizons. Thank you for walking this road with the story. If it resonated with you, I'd love to hear your reflections. Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow and subscribe so you won't miss the journeys yet to come.